Hi guys, this is a follow-up video to one I made recently demonstrating a Sharp X68000 Core running on a MiSTer FPGA. The previous video didn't go into very much detail, so I'm just going to show you a few more of the features. But again, it's going to be quite light, hopefully, because to explain everything would be a little too much for one video, but we can always do a follow-up if that would be useful. So I'll talk you through some of the stages that I had to go through to get to this point, but as I say, I'm not going to show you step by step on this video because it's just going to be a bit too much. Alright, so we're starting out the Sharp X68000 Core. Okay, and you can see it's coming out with Human 68 version 3 operating system, and it's running the SX window version 3.1 user interface. So I've already kind of set this up the way I need it, but there's a few things it doesn't seem to remember. It doesn't remember my mouse speed for some reason, so I'll set that. Okay, that's a bit better. Let me just show you what I can here, but some of it's kind of under the hood, so we'll jump out and go back to a Linux command prompt and I can show you the rest of it. We're not selecting our SASE hard disk through the core, we're setting that outside the core, and the reason that I'm doing that is because I actually want it to boot up on the SASE hard disk image. And at the moment it won't do that if you set it within the core. Well, it will, but when you save the settings for the core, that's not something that it'll retain. So that's why I'm doing it the way I am. So we've got the modem set. I've not actually tested that yet. The joystick buttons have been configured. I am using a scale filter on there for what it's worth, although you don't really need it. And there's no floppies currently defined. Audio and video, we can see here we've got it set up for full screen, so that's pushing it to widescreen, 60 frames per second, and CPU speed is set to turbo. Other than that, it's all pretty much defaults. So we'll come out of here. So I'll shut the machine down cleanly, and then we'll just restart the MiSTer. Okay, and as you may already know, if you press F9 from the main menu on the MiSTer, that'll take you out to Linux command line. Can log in there. We just go into /media/fat/games/X68000, and I don't know, that's -L in that directory. You can see here, I'll probably highlight it with the mouse for you, we've got boot2.vhd, and that's actually the disk image that we were just looking at a second ago. So by naming it boot2.vhd, it will actually automatically boot using that image, which means that we don't have to set it elsewhere, and it doesn't matter that we can't actually save it as part of the profile, it'll boot on it anyway. So that's really all there is to show you here. Obviously we've got our boot ROM there, we've got some other images here. Blank disk X68000.dat8 is not actually a blank disk, it's a system disk minus the CLI. SX-window version 3.1, that's a boot disk with the Windows or SX window GUI. It's part of the build for that particular boot disk. There's a couple of blanks here as well. Other than that, it's just the usual stuff that you'd expect, some games and whatever else. But also, whilst we're here, let's have a look at what's in the X68000 system folder. Okay, and if we look at DIM, the DIM folder, okay, so in there you can see there's 5 system disks, but they're all with .dim extensions. And currently, with this version or this build of the core, .dim format is not currently supported. .d88 is. So to use those to build an image, you'll need to convert them to D88. Now, the way I did that was just using an emulator running on top of Windows. I used XM6 and then effectively booted up on a DOS, say DOS, but on a Human 68 image, dropped out to the command line, mounted up the disks, and then used the disk copy utility. And as I say, it's a little convoluted, but that's essentially the process that you need to go through to convert them to D88s. But actually, if you build the image on the emulator, you don't really need to convert any of them. You could literally just install them on the emulator using the .dim files because they're supported. But either or. I've converted the first disk, which is, as you see, that one there, SX window version 3.1 disk 1 of 5.d88. And the reason I've converted that is so that if I do want just a simple boot disk and I want to boot into the windowing system without having to boot from a hard drive image, then I can. Anyway, that's probably enough on that for now. Suffice to say, after a bit of jiggery-pokery, we finally get to the point where we've got a boot image, in this case boot2.vht, and you can see it's 40 megs in size. 40 megabytes is the maximum supported image size when using HDFs or VHDs. So that's why it's 40 megabytes. If I could make it bigger, I would. But 40 megabytes for this particular operating system is actually quite a reasonable amount of space, and you can get a few games on there, and you can always have additional images if you need to, and then just swap between them. So we'll come back out of there. Okay, and now let's go back into the core. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, if you do want to see the step-by-step process to get this image built, then I can make another video, but it'll probably be quite a lengthy video and not exceptionally exciting for anyone else. But it might be worthwhile. Anyway, let's see where we've got to here. So, as you'll probably appreciate if you know anything about the X68000, or if you've already played around with it, most of the dialogues and errors and message prompts, and even most of the file names for that matter, are in Japanese. I don't know about you guys, but my Japanese is somewhat limited, although I am getting to learn a few of the symbols nowadays, having played with this for a few days. But basically, once you've got your SX window image up and running, and this has been built with all 5 system disks, you will end up with, and if we just drill into drive A, because that's what it will come up as by default, this is what you end up with. So as you can see, most of the file names are in Japanese, so to me they don't make a great deal of sense, unfortunately, but the best thing to do is literally just go through, once you've got a stable image, make sure you've got a backup copy of it in case you break it, and then go through and spin a few of them up and just see what's what. The only one that I recognise is that one because I recognise the symbol, and that's the control panel, but we've already got that open. I think that's the calculator, yeah. Somewhere, we've got the clock open already. There's some other bits and pieces in there, so as I say, best bet, just go through and play around and see if you can work out what's what. So in addition to all of this lot, I've created this bin directory or bin folder, and on the system disk that I showed you earlier, the one that's called blank, which is available as part of the MiSTer Core build. Don't know whether it will come down as part of the update, but you can certainly get it from the X68000 MiSTer Github page. And if you grab that, you'll be able to boot on it. But on that disk image, you'll find a bin folder, bin directory, with all of these utilities. And some of these are going to be really, really handy when you're trying to manipulate other images. Things like copy all and disk copy and attrib, what was further back somewhere, where was it? There, if you want to change attributes on files. And what else is useful? Formats, fairly self-explanatory. Subst is exceptionally useful if you're trying to install games and things, or other applications on the hard drive that would normally expect to be mapped to the root of drive A or drive B, because obviously drive A is coming up as the hard drive. So again, it's really a case of playing around, but my suggestion would be that you grab that bin directory and make sure that when you create any image, you copy all of the or copy the whole bin directory, and then it's there if you need it, and perhaps add it into your path as well would be a good idea. Okay, so you can see games is grayed out. That's because I've dragged it onto my desktop and it's effectively created a shortcut. So games is open, and on here I've installed some games. So when I say install, basically what I've done is copy them over from the disks, from the floppy disks, and then where necessary I've created some additional simple scripts, batch files in other words, so that I can run them. Now there's a few that are work in progress, some of these work, some of them don't, but if I show you one that I prepared earlier, so here's Xenon II, and you can see we've got disk 1, disk 2, don't worry about the back file, that's just a backup copy of something. Okay, a backup copy of the start file when I've edited it actually. And then if we have a look, if I can remember, one of these will allow us to view the file contents. But again, well, that'll run it. Okay, double clicking will run it as well. Okay, well since we've run it, I might as well show you this working, although this was featured on a previous video. But on the previous video I was actually running it from floppy, not from the hard drive. So this is just to demonstrate that it can be made to work. Okay, we'll just lower the audio level on that a bit. Okay, so I'm using a Competition Pro joystick for what it's worth, but obviously if you're running it on your MiSTer you can use any supported controller. Okay, okay, that'll do for that. Now, I haven't worked out how to quit the game and get back to the desktop, if that's even possible, so for now we'll just use the reset. Okay, so that one, there you go, finally. Okay, so you can see here in our start.bat file, which is what we're using to run up that particular game, we're using subst B for A games Xenon II disk 2, and then once we've done that we're substituting A for A games Xenon II disk 1. So basically what that's doing is mapping drive B to, or the root of drive B to Xenon II disk 2 and the root of drive A to Xenon II disk 1, and then it's loading, it's going to execute rather load 68.x, which effectively starts the game up. Now you can see you've got these Japanese characters, but actually they're backslashes. And if you're wondering how you get a backslash, yeah, it's a little tricky actually, because the keyboard mapping doesn't support it, and it doesn't support it when you're in X Windows or SX window, I should say, either. So the way you have to do this, unless anyone can find a better way, is go into the command line, and then we CD into games, and then CD into, well actually I don't even need to show you that. Let's just go from wherever we are on the mouse, just right click, and you can see you get a soft keyboard up, and voila, we get that symbol. And to demonstrate the point, so if I just come back, right, and then if we look, so we're in the root of the drive. So if we wanted to CD into games and then backslash Xenon II, for example, and then we go directory up, there we go, we can see our disk 1 and disk 2, and we can see that here, if I show you with the mouse, we're in the right directory, /games /Xenon II. So that's how you get a backslash or any other characters that you can't seem to find on your keyboard mappings. A little bit of a faff, but it does work. So that's basically how you get games installed and running on the hard drive or other applications. Doesn't have to be games, of course, whatever. Is there anything much I can show you here? So this is essentially your control panel that we've already got left open on the desktop. You do have some controls of the desktop colors. It's a little bit basic, but if you want to play around with it, you can. Personally, I prefer the default. Mouse settings we already had a quick look at, although for on mine it doesn't seem to save the settings for some reason. RS-232 settings, that could be useful if you want to use it with a modem. And note that the Core does appear to support UART mode for a modem, so that could be interesting. I haven't yet found any terminal emulation software for it, so I'm going to keep an eye out for some of that. Let's show you a couple of the games whilst I've got this thing on the go. So here you go. In this case, the batch file I've written for is pac-mania.bat, but it's exactly the same principle. So if we run that up, it's actually a very good version, well, in my opinion. Okay, so we won't play too much. It's really just to demonstrate it. So it's kind of similar to the one or the version of pac-mania on the Amiga, but a little different. Oops. Okay, so I'm not going to play all of that, just to give you an idea. And again, still haven't worked out whether you can actually quit out of the game back to the desktop. So I'm still having to reset in between at the moment. Okay, and I think one final one I'll show you, because this is a bit of a classic. With the R-types there, that works great. Lemmings works great. Frogger, great. Afterburner, not bad. Crossfire's definitely worth a look. And there's hundreds and hundreds of others, no doubt. But this is just a small selection. And these are all just demos, actually. So the demos are pretty easily available. Okay. Definitely level easy for me. So you may recognise this, you may well have played this in the arcade back in the day, back in the 80s, possibly early 90s. Okay, that's enough of that. Great game though. Okay, so what else can I tell you? It still needs a little bit of work. It's not perfect. It's a hell of a lot better than it was a few months ago. There are a few games that I found that don't currently run. Super Hang-On's one of them, unless anyone else has managed to get it working, but I haven't as yet. But generally, it's looking pretty good. So definitely worth having a play, and you know, see how you get on. Your experience may differ from mine, but for now, hopefully that was useful, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys.